It's a sad story, but I learned so much, Kay, about unconditional love, being dedicated for a guy who was a partner, then a friend. His mom and I are still in touch. She's been at 2 lectures of mine. I call her Mom Pam, calls me her son-in-law. Still hear from her to this day. But if it wasn't for the Copa.
Hello, my name's Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the show that is all about lost queer spaces. Only it's not really about that. I mean, it is about that, but it's also, and more importantly, it's about the personal stories from the people who drank there and danced there and loved there. And this week, we're all about that last one. We are all about the love. We are heading to Flint, Michigan to hear about the Copa, which was a club that existed across 2 different sites between 1980 and 1995. And yeah, it's about the Copa. We're going to find out about that club. But really, this is a love story. And the first scene in that love story just happened to take place at the Copa. And who is here to tell us all about it? Well, that is Greg R Baird, the self-proclaimed professional homosexual and a global lecturer on LGBTQIA+ civil rights, allyship, and community. Now, Greg is currently working on his memoir, so he was in a bit of a reflective mood when we sat down to talk, and he taught me quite a lot of really important things, like how he learned to masturbate and who guided him on that journey, how he managed to squeeze into a pair of very tight trousers for his very first night at the club. And more importantly, and on a serious note, I know you don't get those from me very often, but on a serious note, he taught me about love and what unconditional love really means. Right, should we get into it?
I grew up in a very small town in Michigan, for one thing, for everybody that's listening around the world. Michigan is shaped like a mitten. So, yeah. So
a left or a right mitten? Hang on.
It would be the left hand.
Okay.
Like if you put your left hand, I'm doing this while we're talking. The left hand out in front of us. And honestly, what's funny is my hometown, people would go, "Where are you from?" You would point to certain areas of your hand. So my hometown was in the thumb area of Michigan, and it was called the Gateway to the Thumb. I kid you not. That was our big selling point of a home of 2,800 people is welcome to the Gateway of the Thumb. But I grew up in a very small community. My father was a hardware store owner, passed down from my grandparents, Baird's Hardware. And the thing about my family is they were very bigoted, very prejudiced, white privilege, upper middle class. And we heard all of the horrible jokes at dinner time, the gay jokes, the Jewish jokes, everything that my father heard at the hardware store from his buddies during the day. Mind you, we had good morals and values. That wasn't, of course, one of them. So growing up, I was an overweight kid, chunky, and didn't know what was going on, although I remember watching certain TV shows and thinking that the men in them were quite hot, like Batman, and Billy Crystal was in a show called Soap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I thought, I was hiding in the corner watching that because my mother saw the craziness of this show and the sexual innuendos. She would have been appalled, but I got away with that for many years. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I was turned on by certain men. But my first experience that I had sexually was at 14, and that was with a best friend of mine. And that lasted up and on until almost a senior in high school.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And so I wouldn't consider it a long-term relationship, but he was over at my house for my birthday. I was over at his house for his birthday, and
things happened.
Oh, things did happen. And it wasn't awful. It wasn't, it was I'm really grateful for those experiences. But I would never have come out to my parents. One, I was an adopted child. And so was my brother. I have a brother 2.5 years older. And here's a fun little fact for your audiences. My brother and I are both adopted. We're both adopted from different families. And the drum roll, please. My brother and I are both.
I might have figured this out. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not nature then. It's absolutely nurture, and your parents are the ones responsible. Is that what you're saying?
Well, my mom blamed it on my dad when they divorced, He said, oh, it's your dad's fault,
Okay, so why don't we just back up a scooch here?
Sure.
So just really quickly, you've talked about your dad coming home with homophobic and racist jokes. So does that mean that before you were having these feelings, you had a concept of what gay was?
I didn't have a concept at all when that happened with my best friend. We were in a cabin up in northern Michigan, and he said, so-and-so showed me how to masturbate. And I was so like, oh, yeah. Mind you, I live a very sheltered life at the time. I was 14, never masturbated. And he said, so-and-so told me if you do this long enough, this is what's going to happen. And I was like, what? And I was intrigued by it. And he goes, well, you want me to show you? And so he did. And I was so enamored. You're like, honey, this just opened up the door to whatever is going on.
And what came flooding out of that door? What?
Oh, yeah. Well, screaming goodness. And, there was a lot of shame. We all had the shame growing up being different. And I felt shameful. I was in a religious family too, pretty religious, where you were always told if you covet another man's wife, if you do this, my mom was all into the 10 Commandments kind of thing. You would go to hell. And being adopted, I thought they're going to send me back.
Oh,
and I had.
But hang on. Sorry. I keep asking follow-up questions. So after he'd shown you how to masturbate, did you think like, oh, okay, I am attracted to him, it was enjoyable because of him? Or were you like, wow, I've just discovered the world of masturbation, and didn't connect it with being gay?
I connected it with being gay, but also I was very attracted to him.
Okay.
And it kind of flip-flopped too, because this is somebody that was my best friend growing up. And then all of a sudden we've added this other layer to it. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
And he was the only one for several years. There was another person in my high school that came over and we explored about the same kinds of things.
What?
I'm called Jezebel. Yeah.
Sorry to make this about myself for a minute, but I never had any of these experiences. No one even hinted at this kind of thing to me. And so every time I talk to someone where it was like, yeah, my friend came over and then we blew each other, I'm like, what? Why didn't this happen to me?
Yeah, he came over, and it was always he was spending the night. That's how we got, and we slept in the same bed. And the door was wide open upstairs, and I only did that because I didn't want to. If my mother was going to make a venture upstairs, which she never did, I would have probably 5 seconds to like, and it never happens.
That's living life on the edge.
And my brother, he wasn't around. This is like high school stuff. So he left. He graduated, so he wasn't around. So I had the whole upstairs of the house to myself, and so I didn't have to worry about that. And, you're trying to be quiet when you're having a little fun in a double bed. Sounds like a country song. But yeah, and it was never spoken of outside of that situation. But I knew if I got invited over to his house, it was an overnight deal. I knew what was going to happen.
You knew
Same
what
vice
that
versa.
meant. But so
Yeah.
did either of you catch feelings, like proper, like romantic feelings, or was it kind of just understood that it was an experimenting kind of thing going
Yeah,
on?
that's a great question. I loved him as a best friend.
Uh-huh.
And that lasted like I was over at his house for his birthday. He was over to my house for my birthday. My parents liked him. My dad invited his dad up north to our cabin up north during the snowmobiling season. And, and, there was never anything like, hey, I'm in love with you, or, that never happened. But I will tell you, many years later, he's married, divorced, married again. He's got children, so not identified as a gay man. But I was always concerned about him feeling guilty, like because of what we did is the reason why I'm gay. General notion how maybe some people would think. So I was at a class reunion, and I knew I was going to see him. And I mentioned to my gay friends here in Chicago, I said, I really would like to talk to him and ask him if he's okay. Like, after all these years, I need some kind of closure. And my friends are like, do not say a word to him. Like, girl, do not say a damn word. And I don't know. So I'm driving to Michigan, 5 hours, 5.5 hours to this small town reunion at a country club. And I go in and he looked great. I saw everybody. I'm like, how am I going to get him away from everybody and ask him? So, we're about 2 drinks in probably to the evening, 3 and after the dinner and everything. And I'm standing on the edge of the dance floor and he's standing right beside me. I'll never forget this. I go, I need to ask you a question. And he said, I already know what you're going to ask me. I said, I just want to make sure that you're okay after all this time and there's no guilt or anything. Because I said it was a really incredible time in our lives. And without missing a beat, he said, Greg, I don't feel guilty whatsoever. He goes, we were buddies then, whatever that means. But we were buddies then. We were close. He goes, I feel no guilt. And the conversation ended. I didn't pursue it anymore. And we've had another reunion since then, a couple of them get-togethers. He's always very kind. He's very conservative, different opinions on
with like a capital C conservative.
Mid-C.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if we're close. We follow each other on social media. I don't hear from him usually, like birthdays. Verbatim, I know when his birthday is. He knows when mine is. We'll say happy birthday. Yeah. His wife is a classmate of mine. I wouldn't dare say, hey, by the way, I want to let you know.
Do you want to know how I learned how to wank?
Yeah, I know, really. Like, what a lucky girl you are. So, yeah, it's all I needed is, and why I needed that validation or whatever, I just didn't want him to feel like, oh, God, because I fooled around with him all those years. This is why Greg's a professional homo now.
the sheer power. But okay, I'm not 100% clear though, because you've talked about like a brotherly love that you had for him, and like, this real kind of fraternal thing going on. Did you ever feel romantic love for him?
At the point in my life now when I identify what romantic love is, and I've had that in a couple of relationships, I did not feel that way with him.
Okay.
It was more, it was sexually, it was very interesting because we did everything not to be discovered. So it was first, you're horny teenagers trying to hide your little secret. And then you have the religious, he was of a different church that really makes them feel guilty for doing anything nice in their lives. So you work all of those factors in, but it was kind of an unspoken word that you never brought that up. And he ventured off doing more sports things, and I wanted to do more theater, and there was no theater at my school. So, I was like Glee Club thing, I was in choir and chorale and artsy fartsy and, you know.
Well, okay. And then, so as this was going on and you were having this secret affair is not the right word, but you were having this secret dalliance with your best friend, you talked about the pressure that you felt in your family life. Can you unpack that a bit more?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, my family loved him. But the pressure from my family, now, one, people will say, well, did you know your brother was gay at the time? No, I didn't learn my brother was gay until something was mentioned at my grandmother's funeral. And we can talk about that in a minute. My dad had mentioned it. My brother's gay, and it put a spark in my head.
Oh, so what's the age difference quickly between you and your brother?
Doug is 2.5 years older.
Oh, okay. So not huge.
No. And we're totally opposite. He's very private and quiet. And I'm more the outgoing, of course, because work, what I do. And I was just always was the outgoing kid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my family, when you hear all these jokes and things mentioned through my family, you knew that there's no way you would ever come out. And I say to a lot of people I speak to, if we had a gay straight alliance at my school or, the gay pride stuff, would I be involved with that? Knowing the family that I was involved with? I don't know. I don't know. Things have changed considerably, but I was more afraid of what my father would probably do if he found out. And in the long run, my father was the least of my worries. My mother was, and my stepfather were the ones that took it to the grave of not being accepting.
Oh, interesting. Well, okay. So before we talk about that, in terms of like a day-to-day moving around your life when you were that age, were you able to kind of compartmentalize the two things and engage in family life when you weren't up in the bedroom playing with your friend?
Playing hide the sausage. I never really thought about it until he was around. My big issue is I was body shamed all the time for my mother. My mother was beautiful, smart, intelligent, beautiful. A lot of people thought she was. She's a beautiful woman. And the body shaming was more of an issue than I think maybe my sexuality. So much the fact she would take these Sears catalogs. I don't know if you had those in the UK, but he had Sears catalog. And my mother would go in and look for a male model, and she would cut it out, and she would chop the head off and put it on the fridge and put my head on top of it and would say, that's the son that I want. And I did not remember that until many years ago when I was cleaning out my childhood home and my cousin Kathy came over. I had not seen it ever. And she goes, you know what? I was really horrified how you were treated is when your mom did that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. But think about that as a kid dealing with weight issues, but then you're not understanding the sexual aspect. And as you got older, it's like, could you really have a loving relationship, or was it all about sex and hooking up and going to like a movie theater that has porn in it with a little 25-cent boost, and that's your life. And that's not what I wanted at all. But I didn't know I could have a relationship until probably I got to college, and that's when I got my first boyfriend. So,
okay. So let's then talk about the response from your dad versus the response from your mom and your stepdad.
So I came to a point where I was going to tell them. So I thought, well, maybe I'll run it by my mother. Seemed more critical of it because she belonged to a church. And at that point, my parents, got to back up a little bit. My parents were divorced when I was 18, finalized when I was 19. And I graduated from high school in 1979. My grandma, my dad's mother, passed away in 1991, sorry. And I thought, well, I'm going to go down, and I thought maybe I would tell them in the course of that weekend why I thought it would be a great time to tell my dad and my stepmother I was gay when my dad's mother is laying in a casket, so I thought, well,
It kind of puts it into perspective, though, right? Like, oh, this really bad thing over here, and now this tiny little thing about me. I'm just gay. Okay, bye.
yeah. And so I was standing in the receiving line. I'm getting to your answer here. A receiving line, and my stepmother comes forward while we're greeting my grandmother's friends because pay respects. She goes, by the way, we think your brother's gay. I looked at her, and Dad goes, yeah, we think he's a homo. And I thought, son of a bitch, he's blocking my information. How dare he?
This was supposed to be my day.
This is my day, not yours. So I never in my life thought anything of that. And so I thought, no, there's no way. So I went home after the funeral, and I was staying with my mother, so the divorced wife of my father. And I said, I was totally testing the waters. And I said, I wouldn't believe what Dad said about Douglas. And she goes, well, what's that? I said, that Douglas is gay. And my mother goes, oh, what an awful thing to say. Just that, what an awful, horrible thing to say. Your thought, So I waited a bit to say anything. And then I got my degree in secondary education later on in life. I kind of mucked around in school and went into broadcasting. And so I finally decided I was going to get a teaching degree. So when I did my student teaching, I needed a free place to stay. And I asked my mother to go home and live with my mother and my stepfather for, I don't know how many months it was, 4 months. It was not in my wheelhouse, but because it would really limited a lot of freedom. So first off, I told my gay friends, don't call me, because my mother's like an inspector. She'll figure it out right away. And I don't want her to know that I'm gay. So I did all these awful things to my friends, not calling. And I had a local friend got a teaching job near my hometown. So he and I would get together on the weekends when I stayed with my mother, and we would go to the Copa nightclub. Well, anyway, I did this a few times, and I would say to my mother while I stayed there, oh, I'm going to the movies, or I'm going over to errands. I'm going over here, Well, there's only so many movies you can go see. And finally, one Saturday, and I actually believe it was coming out day, October 11th, my mother was really angry about something. And she was standing at the bottom of the stairs, and I was at the top of the stairs by my room. And she was going on and on and on about something. And finally, she goes, and by the way, don't you think I don't know where you go on a Friday night? And I was blown away. Like, how in the hell does she know I'm going to the Copa? My gay friends. And I thought, well, here goes. So I set out to her. I go, where do you think I'd go on a Friday night? And she looked like a missile ready to blow up. And she goes, oh, you go out with the boys. And then she kind of stood behind the staircase to go back in the kitchen. And the voice said to me, don't let her get away. So I said, will you get your ass back over here? I never said it to my mother. I was so mad. She goes, what? And I thought, well, here goes nothing. And I'm going to be without a place to stay. This is what I initially thought too. And I go, do you want me to tell you that I'm gay? Do you want me to tell you that I'm a homosexual? Well, yes, I am. And I'm proud of it. Crickets. It was quiet. And then all of a sudden, and because it was a nice day out, we had the screen door open. She was like right in front of the screen door to go outside. She opened up the screen door, walked in the front yard, literally like a Vita. And she goes, I have a gay son. My son is gay. Like having like a nervous breakdown, like a drama queen. And I said, will you get back in this damn house? And she goes, I'm doing it because you told me you're proud of it. I said, I don't want the whole freaking neighborhood to know. And she came in. She just was being awful. So I thought, well, I don't have a place to stay now. So I packed all of my stuff in the small little Geo Tracker, small SUV, and left. And I really did not have a place to go. And this was on a Saturday. I was to teach on Monday. I stayed in Flint, Michigan, and located my ex, James, who came by the Howard Johnson's hotel. And I thought he was going to spend the night there to counsel me. And here I spent, I don't know how much money it was. It wasn't a whole lot. And then the next night, I booked a hotel room nearby where my school was at. And it was awful. The whole room smelled like stale cigarette smoke, and people were screwing next door. And it was just terrible. So I went to school the next day, and it's all in my mind. Like, I don't know where to go. I don't need more money. I'm not getting paid for student teaching. So I called her. She was crying on the phone. She goes, I'm so sorry. She goes, why don't you come back home? All shivery. So I go back home, and she kind of made amends with me, but it was never spoken of again. And I know she told my stepfather, and he was nice, but I later found out before he passed away how homophobic he really was. And when I left, I graduated in that December. And when I was hugging my mother goodbye, she nervously, I'm really free about love. And I think when you don't come from a loving atmosphere, a loving family, you want that so badly in yourself with other people. And for other people to have that, I was always giving love hugs and everything. My mother hugged me so tense, and she said, Greggy, call me Greggy. She goes, Greggy, I want you to know I love you. I just don't know how to show it. And I remember going up north to Michigan, a 4-hour drive to where I was going to live. And I thought, how sad that my mother does not know how to love her own son. Like, what is the block? And I didn't know until later on that she had a lot of other issues and things that she dealt with, but she never really understood it. I wish there would have been a P flag. I wish there would have been meetings she could have gone to. Would she have gone? I don't know. But
okay. Shall we talk about that place that I know that you go to every Friday night?
Absolutely. I'm going to back up a little bit. I wasn't really comfortable in coming out when I was younger. And one of the reasons, like in the mid 80s, I went back to school and went to a broadcasting school. So during that time, I was busy. I was working at another job. I was working at a convenience store midnights and going to broadcasting school. So there wasn't a lot of time to go out. But Flint, Michigan was about a 45-minute drive, maybe less, from where I grew up. And a friend of mine, John, said, hey, listen, there's a gay bar called the Copa. And he goes, let's get some new outfits. Let's go to the mall and get some new outfits. And so, and I bought, I was a chunky guy, and I bought these pants that barely fit. I literally had to lay on the bed to zip them up because they look cool. But oh my God, talk about like my own girdle or whatever. So,
wait, does that mean that you just didn't pee all night?
Oh, well, no, that happened. But it was the button more so than anything. If I would have leaned over a certain way, you would have heard a gunshot go off. And So we were in downtown Flint, which is scary back in the day as it is on Saginaw Street. But we went to the Copa, and we got there, and the first this is how shelter it was. First drag queen I ever saw, big old queen named Tallulah, was at the door. And she goes, well, hi, boys. And she goes, well, you come here on a good night. All we wanted to do was drink, Terry, and dance. There's no dancing going on tonight. They were doing a game show called Let's Make a Deal. And they go, here's your ticket. Come on in. So, and I looked at my friend John and go, I'm going to tell you right now, the way my luck goes, they're going to call my name up, my number. So we're sitting in the audience. I'm literally looking around to make sure I didn't know anybody, because then that would validate that I'm gay, and then somebody may go back and say something to somebody. So we're sitting there, and they're doing what's behind the curtain or the door or the box or the envelope, like the game show. And lo and behold, my number was called. So I get on the stage. I'm nervous. Everybody is looking at me. I don't know how many people are there, maybe 50. And so they bring out a box on a stool, something underneath the box in an envelope. And they go, okay, girl, you can pick out whatever you want here. You can have the envelope, which is probably cash, or under the box. And so people are like, envelope. There could be like a few $100 or $20 or whatever in there. And I was very intrigued by what's under the box. So I chose the box. And underneath the box was a smoke alarm that you would attach on your ceiling. And the crowd went wild, especially when the drag queen goes, "Oh, honey, when you and your boyfriend in the audience go home and bump pussy tonight, and you can slap that smoke alarm on your thigh and it'll go off."
So tell me what it feels like walking through the door the first time.
I was scared. I was really scared. And also it validated that I am gay. Like I'm logging in here and I'm gay. I'm going in a gay bar.
Oh, so it validated to the external world. It didn't validate to you.
It validated to me.
Oh, so all the sex that you'd had with your friend upstairs with the door open, that didn't validate it to you?
No, it confused me even more. Because I was the token son. They never thought my brother was going to have children. And because I had worked with kids all my life, they thought I was going to have like a Brady Bunch family. You know, I was going to have all these kids, and that didn't happen. And that was a lot of pressure. So I knew when I walked in there, I'm like, yeah, this is my community. This is my world. Although I was scared out of my mind.
Interesting.
And I'm downtown Flint, Michigan, where it's already like you got to run, from your car to the bar and from the bar to your car back at night. It wasn't the most wonderful downtown area at the time.
And so to have that commitment to go through with going through the door, you had to really mean it.
Yeah.
But how interesting though that you say that that up until then you hadn't solidified in your mind that you were gay.
No, I mean I've shared probably with a couple people the feelings, like my friend John that was with me. We knew we were both gay, so going in there, it's like you're now not having these thoughts alone. You're with other like-minded people.
Whew. Okay, so there's quite a lot riding on this first visit.
Oh yeah, along with a new outfit.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It was just a great time to get away. And when I was in college, it was great to go with friends. And then probably the most unique and life-changing experience is when I met my first boyfriend named James. And he was sitting up in the balcony. I was with my friend Ted. I looked over. Ted goes, "That guy's checking you out." And I, self-esteem wasn't the best then. I go, "No, he's not checking me out. Who's the me, whatever, He goes, "No, he's checking you out." So I looked over and this, they were playing dance music. And he goes, "Greg, go over and ask that guy to dance." And I'm like, oh man, and it's that whole thing. Am I going to be rejected or whatever? So I thought, what do I have to lose? So I walked over and I said, "Hi, my name's Greg. What is yours?" He goes, "It's James." And I said, "Would you like to dance?" And he goes, "I would love to." I was floored. So we're going down the stairs. They had these wide stairs that were carpeted and gorgeous. And as we're going to the dance floor, the music switches and it's no longer dance music. It's a song by Chris Bird called "Lady in Red."
Aww.
My first dance with James was "A Lady in Red," and it was nothing short of magical. And we ended up kissing, making out a little bit afterwards, hearts beating. It was just extraordinary. And you planned on meeting a week later. I come back on a Friday to meet up and have our first official date at the Copa. And dating myself again, I went to a music store and found the cassette single of "A Lady in Red." And as a gift, I walked there and the first thing I gave him, I go, "I want you to have something to remember of our dance last week." And I gave him the cassette single of "A Lady in Red." Aww. And so that began a really interesting relationship. So much the fact, I worked at a summer camp for several years in the Berkshires of Connecticut. And I was going to be away for the summer. And I met him in April of 1990. And I said, "I'm going away for the summer." And we had gotten really close. And he was working for a drugstore chain as a pharmaceutical assistant. And he goes, "Is there any job openings at that summer camp?" I'm like, "What?" So I ended up getting him a counseling job and he worked in the media department. We traveled out together. That was just incredible that somebody would do that for me. So we spent the whole summer in the Berkshires and, we had night off, day offs together. It was just great. And then the end of the summer, everybody's crying when you leave. And I thought, well, what's going to happen now? Is they going to go back to Flint, Michigan? And I'm going to go back to my college. And he goes, I'd like to move in with you. And I said, James, I'm working on my education. I said, if you move in with me, I want to make sure there's opportunity there for you than not, I don't want to be selfish and have you just move in for me. And so he thought about it, and then he ended up moving in that September of that year. And he got some real shitty jobs. Like he worked for a telemarketer and that ended, horrible job. Then he worked for KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he'd come home, smelling like fried chicken. But he was missing home. He was missing the opportunities back in Flint and the surrounding area. And that was about an hour and a half away. So he left right before Christmas of December of that year. And I was devastated. He didn't leave me for anybody else. He just left. I said to him, I go, James, if you're sad here, I need to let you go. You need to find your own way. And if you're going to be happier at home, then that's what you should do. And that was a hard thing to do. And I was wrecked. Oh my God, these two lesbians that were there took me under their wing because I was just right before Christmas too. It was just horrible. So I didn't hear from him for the longest time. And then I was at the Copa, probably the spring of that year, and some chatty Cathy queen comes up and said, I need to let you know something. James ended up sleeping with somebody that was HIV positive, and he's HIV positive. And my heart sank. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I need to ask James this then, people talk. And mind you, this is right in the thick of it of people getting HIV, and you never think for once, oh my God, this is going to affect me. And I saw him a few months later on a Friday night. I said, James, I go, I need to ask you a question. He goes, it's true. He already knew I was going to ask him. And I said, are you okay? And he goes, I'm fine. And I said, I just want to let you know that when I told you I love you, it's forever. So if things get bad or you need help, let me know. And he said, I will do that. So time passed and I had moved, the Copa closed in 95. I was thinking about this before our conversation. I did not go to the Copa again after like 91 because I was so far away. And it closed. The owner passed away and it went to his sister and it kind of fell apart. And now there's it's a green space now. That former department store where it was at is gone. But I reconnected with James in 1996 when I got the job up in northern Michigan at my college, and he had full-blown AIDS at that point and was living in really just unhealthy kind of situation at his father's house. I just think he was really unhappy. So I would go down about every weekend or every other weekend, 4.5 hour drive down, 4.5 hour back on a Friday, pick him up and feed him and give him some solace and kindness in northern Michigan in my apartment. And then on a Sunday, I would drive all the way back. And that went on for quite a long time. And then he ended up getting really ill. And this was right around probably 96, 97, probably 97. He went to live with his mother. And I ended up getting some health care come in for James. His mother was thrown into all of this. And I gradually saw this man that I love. I would go down and pick him up. He was just fading away. And he was always excited for me to come down. But one of my heartbreaking memories is I picked him up in my little geo tracker to take him out for the afternoon to give his mom a break. And she said to me, I want you to know he can't communicate only by squeezing your hand. He can't talk anymore. He knows that you're there, but he just can't communicate. So I wheelchair up to the car, got him in the car. He could stand and get in. And we're driving down the road. Big crocodile tears are coming out of his face. And I said, honey, it's okay. He says, we're going to go get lunch and hang out. And I held his hand. And we went, I'm talking small town. Like they only had a McDonald's in town. So I said, honey, just hand squeeze. Tell me what you want when I say it. So we ended up ordering a Big Mac, fries, and a chocolate shake. And we go to this park. There's a river. And we're sitting there, and I had all the food on the dash and everything. And I'm opening things up, and I put the burger on his lap and the wrapper. And I'm drinking Diet Coke or something, a sandwich. I look over, and has a sandwich in his hands, but he can't feed himself. And it literally wrecked me. And I did not, and I'm holding all this grief and sadness inside. And I did not show that to him because I want to be strong for him. So here I am, what normally would take some of us, 10 minutes to eat, a meal from McDonald's. We were there for 45 minutes because I was tearing up bits of the sandwich and feeding him along with the fries. And when we got done, he was happy. But then we started going back to his house, big tears coming down. He didn't want to go home. And his mom said that. He goes, oh, he probably didn't want to go home. And I said goodbye to him. And then I saw him one last time where he was pretty much comatose. His eyes were open. And I was leaving, and I just felt that was the last time I was going to see him. And his mom said, oh, he cries all the time. I go to the store, he cries. I said, no, this is different, Pam. And he died on January 2nd of 1998. I got a call from her. And it's a sad story, but I learned so much, Kay, about unconditional love, being dedicated for a guy who was a partner, then a friend. His mom and I are still in touch. She's been at 2 lectures of mine. I call her Mom Pam, calls me her son-in-law. Still hear from her to this day. But if it wasn't for the Copa, and if it wasn't going there, I never would have met James.
So this is a big question. So take your time to think about it. But how did loving James change your life?
We all have these images of what we want, and our magazines show that. The muscular guy, the well-hung guy, it's evident on TikTok. We all want to watch the food porn, or we want to watch the guys with the shirts off with the gray sweatpants. It's very superficial.
Or both.
Yeah. But when it came down to it, are you willing to dedicate your life? And I think love you or I love you is used very loosely for some. And when I told him I loved him, it was a forever thing. And I stuck to myself to the very end with him. So my relationship since then, I am so blessed. Mind you, I'm single, but the ones that I've had have been a blessing. And I take the positive away from that. The relationships end well. No, they found somebody else. I was cheated on, but I gave it the best I could do. But yeah, it changed a lot just in looking what I want. The connection and chemistry I'm huge on. And I think prior to James, that was important. It's our looks that draws us in probably first. But now even more so, it's the chemistry and connection that, I can't get him off my mind. I can't wait to do this or that with him. There was a lot in common I had with him.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for the Copa, you would never have met him.
Exactly. And I have fond memories of that so much.
And so thinking about that space and thinking about that club and what you were able to do there. So I guess it's the same question. How did that space change you?
Well, I talk about community and what is your legacy now in my lectures and allyship. And looking back at that, I was taking carloads of college students, friends of mine from our LGBT group, in the car, jam-packed, probably illegally jam-packed, hour and a half to the bar. And that was our community. That was my allies. That was the people that were with me in solidarity. So that shaped, I think, a lot for me. My first sense of belonging to anything was that group on campus. You felt kind of like the island of misfit toys. You felt like everybody had their issues. They came over my apartment. They still talk about it today. I had a purple couch, for God's sakes. And they said, oh, Baird, we still remember that purple couch you had and all this drinking coffee. And watching John Waters movies and all that. That was our community. That was what we did.
Wait. So was it an ugly purple couch or was it a beautiful purple?
It was.
Why do they remember it?
It was a couch that it was kind of the half moon looking thing that I literally found on the side of a road. This is funny, in northern Michigan, at an Amish farm. They had it out front, and I thought, what is Amish people doing with this purple couch? So I restuffed the cushions and took it to college, and people still talked about that sofa. And we didn't have any money for anything, but I had coffee, and people brought stuff over, and we went to the Copa on Friday, and there was always some kind of drama, or, we were drinking and people falling asleep on the snowbank on the way back to their dorm, all this stuff. But it was just the community. And that really, for me, changed my life because I knew that we needed to have that community. I know that we needed to have something down the road. And I was always fighting for gay rights. And what a beautiful transition from then to where I'm at now. All these years, I'm 64. I turned 64 last month. And
you get to sing the Beatles song.
I know. I did that on my birthday. So yeah, exactly.
Well, okay. And so with that in mind, if you could go back in time, if you could time travel and had the opportunity to come face to face with yourself when you were that 23-year-old first going to the Copa, what advice would you give him?
Know that things are going to be better. Hold true to your guns. Hold true to who you are. Have faith that things will be better. And always include other people in your joy and your journey.
Aww. And that's us for yet another week. Okay, actually, first of all, that last statement about including people in your joy, that really stuck with me. And I think that's something that I need to practice more. Are you practicing that? Are you doing that? If you are, let me know. We can maybe swap notes, see how we're getting on, that kind of thing. Anyway, if you enjoyed this chat, you want to find out more about Greg, there are plenty of places that you can find him on the interwebs. He can be found on Instagram and TikTok as Gregor Speaks, and he is on YouTube as Greg R Baird, and his website is gregrbaird.com. And if you can't remember these things, if you're worried about putting in the wrong username, don't worry. I have included all of this information in the show notes for this episode. I would also love to spend time with you on social media. So if you want to follow my Lost Spaces accounts, they are on Instagram and on TikTok as Lost Spaces Pod. Right, I am going to go and spread my joy around. Does that sound filthy? That kind of sounds a bit filthy. Oh well.